I'm not your gossip girl, I'm the headline. Truth with a curve, baby, redefine. Welcome to the thirst trap. All the truth looks good in a tight wrap. We talk love, power, so let's in. Turn the world on, let the light in. Yeah, the thirst trap news. You'll drink it up, it's the real you. Never trying to first row news, where every headline's a revelation. I'm not your gossip.
All right. Hopefully you could hear me in the beginning when I came on. I am in full Viking form, complete with freckles and my protection rune. Your Caribbean Viking Queen is here doing her duty to deliver you this week's news. I hope you all are having a happy Friday. And without further ado, let's get into it. The world is on edge. There's power plays being made everywhere. The propaganda machine is at its finest, and we have reached some breaking points. There's a shift happening, and you can feel it. Not in headlines, not in press briefings, but in the energy of the world. It's that quiet moment before a storm, when the air gets heavy, when birds go silent, when something ancient inside you whispers, pay attention, because this week the masks slipped. We're watching leaders gamble with global stability, artificial intelligence being weaponized, not just for war, but for psychological domination. And there's a growing sense that the systems meant to protect us might actually be setting the stage. And here's the truth no one wants to say out loud. We are no longer just watching history. We are inside a turning point. And the question is no longer if things escalate, it's who benefits when they do. And the question we'll make an attempt to answer that. Because tonight we're breaking it all down. From escalating tensions overseas, to digital warfare creeping into your home, to the narratives being crafted to keep you distracted while the chessboard shifts. Because here on the Sixth Sense Report, every Friday, we don't just report the news of the week, we read between the lines. With that being said, let's get in to our first video.
Hello and welcome. You're watching Beyond World is One. My name is Mohammed Saleh, and let's start this broadcast by taking a quick look as to what is making headlines at this hour. Now, Israel claims to have targeted the naval cruise missile production facility in Tehran, operated by Iran's Ministry of Defense. It strikes two key sites involved in developing what it claims are long-range missiles capable of destroying sea and land targets. The Iranian military spokesperson Ibrahim Zolfaghari mocks the American attempts at a ceasefire deal, saying that Americans are only negotiating with themselves and calling the US claims of global power to be a complete failure. And Qatar's foreign ministry says that Doha is not involved in any American and Iran talks, as its priority remains defending the country and addressing the consequences of the various attacks that have taken place on Qatar. And a new strike in western Iraq targets the Hashid al-Shabi paramilitary group, also called the PMF, a day after a similar attack killed about 15 fighters. The strike, carried out by 2 missiles from a fighter jet, hit the same base in the Anbar province. The Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko begins his first official visit to North Korea, aimed at deepening ties and also exploring the joint projects. Both countries have aligned through Western sanctions that have assisted Moscow in the Ukraine war. And India's refiners have secured about 16 million barrels of Russian crude oil for delivery in the month of April, as the supply disruptions from the Iran war have pushed New Delhi to boost imports to help meet the energy demand.
All right. Israel, Iran, global instability. Let's start where the temperature is rising the fastest. The Middle East. This week, tensions surged again after military actions and rising rhetoric between Israel and Iran. Check this video out.
A direct calm, a measured response, and a nuclear-powered carrier at the center of it all. Iran says it struck USS Abraham Lincoln. Pentagon remains silent, says the warship remains operational. The other aircraft carrier, USS Gerald R. Ford, forced to leave the battle zone after an onboard fire. So what is really happening in the Gulf right now? Our next story has all the details. Take a look.
Waves crash. Tension explodes in the Arabian Sea. A US supercarrier faces its ultimate test. Iran boasts it has hammered the USS Abraham Lincoln with missiles. It releases video of missile launch. Explosions lit the night. But no proof of actual impact. Hours later, CENTCOM breaks the silence only to confirm Abraham Lincoln remains fully operational. No denial of the attack. It says the carrier group powers on. F-35 jets roaring off the deck, eyes locked on Iran. The USS Abraham Lincoln is one of the most advanced aircraft carriers in service. Designed for long endurance, the $6.8 billion warship is powered by 2 nuclear reactors and carries about 6,000 personnel. It carries dozens of aircraft, fighters, surveillance jets, and support systems. A floating airbase with strike capability across vast distances. Even under sustained deployment, it can continue operations for extended periods. Missions can be rotated, air wings can be sustained, logistics chains keep it active far from home. For years, Iranian forces have repeatedly warned that American carriers are not untouchable. Iranian military commanders have often claimed their missile and drone arsenal is capable of sinking an aircraft carrier operating close to Iranian waters. Right now, the pressure is building on US naval assets. Another carrier, the USS Gerald R. Ford, is currently out of action after an onboard fire. It has been forced to leave the operational zone, reducing immediate carrier availability in the region. This leaves the USS Abraham Lincoln carrying more weight in an already tense environment. Iran's claim, even if unverified, is part of a broader signaling strategy. It projects reach, it tests response, it keeps the pressure on the US forces. It's a race against time and fatigue. The crew is pushed to the limit, the machinery is strained, and the enemy is watching. The USS Abraham Lincoln remains operational for now, but in a war of attrition, even the most powerful weapon systems have a breaking point.
That was posted 23 hours ago. So apparently it's still operational. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Publicly, leadership, if you've noticed, is playing a game of distance. Statements like, we weren't involved with that. We had no knowledge of that, i.e. Israel attacking some target when the U.S. said no. Can't remember what it was. But behind the curtain, allies don't operate in a vacuum. And when strikes happen this precisely, this strategically, you have to ask, was this truly an independent action or coordinated silence? Because war in 2026 doesn't always start with declarations. Sometimes it starts with plausible deniability. And what we're watching unfold isn't just regional tension, it's a test. How far can things escalate before the world is forced to respond? I mean, all of our allies have repeatedly said, no, but then after, we're not going to help. But then after the damage is done, oh yeah, we'll send some ships. Well, yeah, but we don't need them now. We already did it all. And yes, I have been playing videos from around the world because I think it's important to hear what the rest of the world is saying when they are reporting our news. Because as we're going to continue on, clearly the media is biased. So before we move into our second segment, let me check the chat. Hi, Cherokee. Hi, Jack. Ryan's in the chat as well. What's up, Kingery? Glad you're here with us. Every Friday, I am doing a news report of the week's news. It's a faster paced, more structured show. I interact a little less with my audience, but I try to check the chat in between segments. Florida Backwater says, what's up? Jack says, I'm good with chat. Not sure what that means. Something about the chat idea. What chat idea? Did I miss something? Did production go in a side conversation? Because I don't know what y'all are talking about. Yes, we are working out new formatting bugs. A few formatting bugs. Luna over here looking like Xena Warrior Princess tonight, but way more beautiful. Aw, thank you. I decided to wear my Scandinavian. I have like this Scandinavian vest. You know, my Viking was coming out. I am in full Caribbean Viking form. I have my protection rune on my forehead because I just feel like it's one of those days that we need it. Let me make this chat bigger so you guys can actually read it. I don't want it to. Actually, I might just take it off for the solo shots just because it is. I don't know how to make it readable. Oops, there we go. All right, so Jack says, well, luckily Pakistan is helping us in negotiations. You know, the ones that hid Osama bin Laden. Yes, those people. Interesting, right? Yes, so this is a Viking protection rune. And it's just much needed today. All right, so as we were saying, how far can things escalate before the world is forced to respond? Let's look at this video of the latest wave of U.S. strikes on Iran.
There are fast-moving developments in the Middle East. CENTCOM releasing dramatic new footage as U.S. forces continue to carry out these precision strikes all across Iran. It comes as President Trump extends a pause on striking Iranian power plants as he pushes to wind down the war. Let's get to Mike Tobin. He's in Tel Aviv. Good morning.
And as you mentioned there, Dana, the president has extended that deadline for Iran to allow ships to move freely through the Strait of Hormuz. The president says he's going to allow another 10 days for Iran to let those ships move. After that, he could begin striking power plants. The president wrote on Truth Social, "I'm pausing the period of energy plant destruction by 10 days to Monday, April 6, 2026, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Talks are ongoing." Now, twice, Trump has extended the deadline, saying Iran reached out in good faith and gave a gift of 10 ships through the Strait.
Not me. They're begging to make a deal. And anybody that saw what was happening over there would understand why they want to make a deal.
And Iran's surviving leaders have posted that they have never reached out for talks. The foreign minister says the U.S. acted in bad faith.
This war of aggression is blatantly unjustified and brutal. They initiated this aggression on 28 February, while Iran and the United States were engaged in a diplomatic process to resolve Americans' alleged concerns over Iran's nuclear program.
Meantime, the Israeli Defense Forces working just across the border in southern Lebanon. IDF soldiers located a tunnel network built under a Christian church. Israel says the use of civilian Christian churches for military purposes violates international law, and they say Hezbollah repeatedly exploits the Christian population in southern Lebanon, turning their places of worship into war zones.
Oh, John, I see your comment on Facebook. Of course, only Jesus can protect you. But you know what? I'm going straight to the divine. Do you know how many Vikings were Christian? Also, yes, I'm a Christian spiritualist. Symbols are not for just one religion. Symbols, the power of writing, spelling, right? When you write your spelling, it's just a protection symbol, and it's shaped in a way where when you write it, the angles and the lines, curves, whatever they are, actually hold power. It's just physics. This is quantum physics. Anyway, not to get off topic, just had to make that point. I love Jesus.
Dana?
Mike Tobin in Tel Aviv, thank you.
Let's get some analysis right now from our man Dan Hoffman, CIA Chief of Station formerly. And Dan, good morning to you. Senator John Kennedy, Republican from Louisiana, kind of a rare voice in the Republican Party, said the following this week about getting out. Like now, watch.
As far as I'm concerned, it's time to get out. There will be those who say, well, the Iranian leadership is still a scam, and they could rebuild. But I will tell you this, we have inflicted massive damage on the Iranian government.
He's exactly right about that last part there, about massive damage on Iran. What is your analysis if the president were to say we're done at this point, Dan?
Yeah, I think it's important to remember that we began military action against Iran because we didn't have a deal on Iran's ballistic missiles, their nuclear program, and we wanted also to deal with their support to proxy terrorists in the region. Added to those three challenges that we continue to face is Iran's closing of the Strait of Hormuz. So we've got to get to those objectives. How we get there, whether it's through negotiation or continued airstrikes, potentially boots on the ground in some fashion, or some combination of all of those things, that's yet to be determined. But we need to get to the conclusion of this campaign and ensure that our strategic objectives are met.
Here's General Keane from Fox and Friends earlier about those military objectives.
They're trying to personally survive and keep the regime somewhat intact. And believe me, that is an enormous problem that they have. And on the 20-yard line, we're trying to get to the goal line, and the opposition is putting as much impediments in because they can see how close we are to attaining our objectives.
And yet, of course, Iran is trying to drive turmoil in the oil and gas markets. And at the same time, I thought this was very interesting when you pointed out that Russia is providing Iran with drones. And so there are many different players here. It maybe isn't so easy as us just saying, okay, we're done.
Exactly. Look, Russia wants this war to go on, I think, as long as possible, and they want to inflict as much pain on the United States and our allies as possible. Russia considers their war on Ukraine to be a proxy war against Europe and NATO and the United States by extension. And Russia's ally is Iran. Russia's been giving Iran drones and tactical intelligence, strategic intelligence, just as they gave the same sort of assistance to the Taliban so they could kill U.S. soldiers there. Iran is dispersed their ballistic missiles and their drones, what's left of them. And I agree with General Keane. We've got to finish the job. Iran wants to inflict as much pain on the oil and gas markets and cause as much turmoil as they can. If the regime survives, that's a victory for Iran, particularly if they don't have to meet our objectives regarding their future ballistic missile program, the nuclear program. And remember, there's 1,000 pounds of enriched uranium we need to find.
Sure is.
As well as their support to proxy terrorists.
Dan, it's hard to see behind the curtain of diplomacy at whatever degree it's happening right now. What do you think this delay that the president announced yesterday until the 6th of April at least, what do you think that does on the battlefield?
Well, I think, remember, it's a delay in striking Iran's energy infrastructure, not a delay in our ongoing assault on Iran's defense industrial base with the airspace that we now control. So I think the president is indicating that he's ready to talk. He's always been ready to talk. I'm quite sure that behind the scenes, the CIA is collecting intelligence on the regime to determine whether there may be officials in the regime who might be interested in striking a deal to save whatever is left of their country and potentially have for some sanctions relief and economic growth down the road. But if those things don't happen, then we're going to use this time period, these 10 days, to put in place a plan to potentially to put boots on the ground. There have been some unconfirmed reports that the United States is considering sending as many as 10,000 troops into the region, and so we'll have to track that closely.
Dan, thank you. The weekends have not been quiet times, so we appreciate you kicking us off as we go into Saturday. Thank you. Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube.
And here is the IRGC official Telegram channel releasing an AI video that you all probably know much about. The AI is creepy, and it's making the propaganda machine go full steam ahead and the psychological warfare. So, you want to see how they tried to get in your head this week? This is how Iran decided to terrorize Americans who are laymen or maybe don't understand the situation as much or young. Those who are the weak-minded. This was March 24th. And here is the famous Lego video that's gone viral they put out. And now it's hard to know these days what news coverage is real versus fake. Like, are they gonna send a missile to the Statue of Liberty? I don't know.
Now let's look at the fake ones, the fake videos doing the rounds, like this one. This video shows a damaged US B-2 bomber on a flatbed truck. Its nose is broken, its wings are damaged, and the setting is meant to look like Iran, but this video is not real. Here's another one, a video that shows an intense bombardment of the city of Tel Aviv in Israel. At first glance, it may look like a real video of Iran bombing Tel Aviv. But if you zoom in, you will see the problem with it. Like the solar panels on the roofs, they're lopsided. Another such video shows captured US soldiers. They're kneeling down on the ground. Of course, this video is fake too, the one that you just saw, but you get my point. In the cloud of war, propaganda and falsehoods abound. Plus now we have AI. It can even create entire battlefields that never existed. Some AI chatbots have already misidentified fake videos as real, which means the burden now falls on you, the viewer. Because in this war, seeing is no longer believing. Now let's look at the fake ones, the fake videos doing the rounds.
All right. AI propaganda, folks. So let's talk about something even more unsettling. Not bombs, not missiles, but like she said, it's up to you. It's perception that's unsettling. Iran released an AI-generated video depicting attacks on American symbols disguised as Baal, aka Yahweh, the God of Israel. Not as a military move, but they did this as a message. And this is where modern warfare gets terrifying, because we're no longer fighting just on land, sea, or air. We're fighting in the mind. AI propaganda isn't about truth. It's about emotion, fear, anger, retaliation. And once those emotions are triggered, people start demanding action, even if the threat isn't real yet. So ask yourself, are we being informed or prepared? Because when nations start using AI to simulate destruction, they're not just imagining war, they're rehearsing it. So, there's the threat on your mind. What about the threat on your Wi-Fi? This week, the FBI issued a warning saying that your home Wi-Fi router is at risk to be hacked. The FBI's flagged routers in a cybercrime surge. Of course, this cybercrime surge is coming from none other than Iran and its allies. They issued a nationwide warning about older Wi-Fi routers vulnerable to AvRecon malware, which these criminals use to build residential proxy networks for illicit activity. Specific outdated models from D-Link, Netgear, TP-Link, and Zysol are being exploited with access to compromised devices sold over 369,000 times. And they're urging immediate replacement or firmware updates to prevent hacking that could make innocent users appear responsible for cybercrimes. Could you imagine someone putting inappropriate child material on your modem traffic history? The FBI has identified older routers, like I said, D-Link, Netgear, TP-Link, Zysol, as prime targets for AvRecon malware due to outdated firmware and a lack of security updates. So these popular devices used for home use, they no longer receive patches, making them vulnerable to exploitation. Criminals leverage these weaknesses to install malware and sell access through SOC's escort proxy service, which has already compromised devices over 369,000 times. Residential proxy networks route malicious traffic through unsuspecting households, hiding the true identity of the criminals. This tactic makes it appear that illegal activities such as ad fraud, phishing, or hacking originate from a victim's IP address. The FBI warns that this misdirection can implicate innocent users while allowing attackers to bypass security systems that block suspicious IP. So basically, take steps to protect your network now. Update your modem, update all of your VPNs, make sure your streaming devices aren't pirated, and make sure that you have reduced any suspicious apps while monitoring your network activity. So, let's bring it closer to home. Like, in your Wi-Fi. It's closer than you might be comfortable with, yes. But the FBI has issued these warnings because Kash Patel himself was hacked by Iran. That's been being reported all week. So, they're coming for you. Not the government, not corporations. You, your Wi-Fi, your living room. Your IP address is at risk to be used as a mask for larger scale cyber attacks. Meanwhile, all you're doing is watching Netflix. Someone could be launching digital warfare from your connection. And here's the deeper layer. This blurs the line between civilian and combatant. Because if your network is being used in an attack, are you a victim or are you an unwitting participant in the eyes of the law? This is what modern conflict looks like. It's invisible, it's silent, and already inside your home. Let's listen to the #1 hacker explain how to hack a Wi-Fi connection.
To hack a Wi-Fi network, you need what's called a 4-way handshake. So what I need to do is I would send what's called a deauthentication packet, which is just telling your devices, disconnect from Wi-Fi. So your device, whatever that tablet is going to say, okay, fine, I'll disconnect. So it disconnects, and then I'm listening on my side for it to reconnect. And in that process, I'm going to capture that handshake. So I'll take that handshake, which is just a file, I'll bring that home with me, and I have your handshake to try to crack later. And what I mean by crack is I put that handshake file into the computer, and I have a huge list of words and passwords and frequently used things, and one of them is phone numbers. And when you are cracking a Wi-Fi password offline, it's extremely fast. So I could run through every single phone number in the state of Florida in maybe 10-15 seconds. So if you use a phone number as your password, it's as simple as me taking 10 or 15 seconds to crack it. But the one caveat is I have to be physically within range of your Wi-Fi to capture that 4-way handshake. To hack a Wi-Fi network, you need what.
This is precisely one of the reasons why Iran gifted the United States 10 ships. President Trump said with having all the leadership blown up, he wanted to make sure he was negotiating with people that could actually make decisions in that country. Because you just never know who's on the other side of the phone, who's on the other side of the computer. And they were supposed to give 8 ships. They gave 2 extra, just for good measure. So now let's shift into something just as powerful as weapons. Media bias is something we all have to worry about, something we all have to battle.
I've got questions on Joe Penn.
I'm about to play you an example of media bias. The first is going to be comments regarding Joe Kent. The second would be comments regarding Erica Kirk. And I'll explain why the two connect.
Warned last year when the president nominated Kent that he had a history of embracing conspiracy theories, that he had some ties to white nationalists. Given that, why did the president nominate him to the position in the first place?
The president spoke on this a little bit yesterday in the Oval Office. He said he always thought Joe Kent was a good guy. Obviously has a commendable military record and experience. However, he was not someone who was involved in the presidential daily brief, part of the president's intelligence briefings over the last several months. have not seen him here at the White House for quite some time, and the president feels it's deeply disappointing that after the president gave him an opportunity in this administration to serve the American people, that he would resign with a letter filled with falsehoods, accusing the president of the United States by being controlled by a foreign country. That's both insulting and laughable all at the same time. The president is the leader of the most powerful country and military in the world. Nobody tells him what to do. He makes decisions based on what's in the best interest of this country.
Sorry, the president said
So she says it's full of lies. It sounds like President Trump had a bit of an ego hit right there. So now I'm going to play you. Now, mind you, Joe Kent lost his wife in the Iraq War, another illegal war. So here is a video. Actually, we can just go ahead and let this one play out.
yesterday that he always thought Kent was weak on security. Why would he name someone to run the counterterrorism center who he thought was weak on security?
Again, I just told you, the president gave Joe Kent a chance. He thought he was a good guy with good military experience, and unfortunately, he proved he was not up for the job. And we don't want somebody leading the counterterrorism task force who cannot agree that the #1 state sponsor of terror in this world did not pose a threat to the United States. That's what another falsehood he said in his letter of resignation, which is just unequivocally false. It's backed by intelligence. It's backed by the fact that Iran was building ballistic missiles at a rapid rate to build a shield of immunity so they could build a nuclear bomb. And it's backed by the fact that the president of the United States made the decision to attack Iran before they could attack American troops and our assets and bases in the region. And that was, of course, a good decision, not just for the United States, but for the rest of the world. It should be commended. It should not be degraded in the form of a resignation letter that's riddled with lies.
Okay, now here's the video about Erica Kirk, who also, so one's a grieving widower, the other one is a grieving widow, and look at the contrast.
Everybody always goes, oh, Graham, why? Candace Owens, why? Because she's still doing it, and she's still crossing a line with my friend's widow. And maybe you're the type of person that you will allow a friend of yours, their widow, if they were to pass away, maybe you're the type of person that will not protect that widow. Maybe you're the type of person who would just move on. I'm not. I am not getting to heaven in the pearly gates and Jesus look at me and go, why didn't you stand up there? Not happening. Not happening to me. Another thing I want to say to all of you friends of Charlie out there that have microphones just like I have, that came up with Charlie, many of you I stood on stage with for many, many, many years. Where are you? Why aren't you saying anything?
Because they know Charlie.
Why are you tiptoeing the lines to not make Candace Owens's audience mad at you, and or worse, Candace herself being mad at you? Perhaps you have skeletons in your closet. I don't know. But I want you to know that I respect none of you. And I will never, ever look at any of you the same again. Graham, who are you talking about? It's really easy to find. Look for any of the people that do what I do that are not absolutely 100% calling out Candace Owens. That's who I'm talking about. I'm talking about every single one of them. You don't have to look far, because there's not many that are actually calling out Candace Owens by name. They'll say things like, God bless Erica Kirk, dealing with what she has to deal with. It's horrible what's going on. But they won't name Candace Owens. They wouldn't dare. It's time. If you stand with Erica Kirk, Turning Point USA, and Charlie, I want you to put an American flag in the comment section right now, and I want you to hit that like button.
So there's a difference. One person spoke up about what they believed was wrong, morally wrong, and that we're all being lied to. And then you have another person who is also a widow, who is lying all over the place about little things here and there regarding her husband's death, where she was, what was said, what he believed, what he thought. And everyone gets so angry with Candace Owens because she's grieving. Erica is grieving. You can't leave her alone. Everyone grieves differently. It's so funny, the contrast. But where was this guy when Charlie was alive. Who the hell is this person anyway? I don't even know this person. Graham Allen. It's not that big. I don't know. I wonder who's paying him. And the reason why no one's calling out Candace is because she's asking questions and she's investigating and she's just following where the evidence is leading her. She's not making up untruths. But with that note, let's take a moment and read a message from our friends over at Rumble Wallet. Here's a little inside scoop that many creators are talking about behind the scenes. It's actually one of the reasons I'm using Rumble. They made a way to super chat creators so we get paid immediately and without any fees. YouTube and Twitch take up to 50% of the fees when you tip creators, and this method takes none. That's right, the platform takes 0 fees, and I keep nearly 100% of what you send me. You can super chat with Bitcoin, Tether USD, or even Tether Gold stablecoins. The tip will show up directly in our Rumble chat, which I'll do my best to read. All you need to do is download the Rumble wallet on the App Store and send the tips directly to your favorite creators. You can go to wallet.rumble.com or you can download the app directly from the app stores. Seriously, what an amazing way to get rid of the middleman and help the creator economy. Shout out to Rumble for making this disruptive technology. All right. So let's look at this video. It's a discussion on tolerance versus freedom of speech.
Freedom of speech should include uncomfortable or offensive opinions.
Absolutely.
Everybody's going to agree with that one too.
I think, unfortunately, it is obviously protected by the First Amendment, but that doesn't mean that we should tolerate it. We should call out offensive speech where it's at. So if someone is saying slurs, we shouldn't just let them say it because it's the First Amendment, right? We need to be able to hold those people accountable where they are, and I think it happens a lot when people are on, social media and they say something, then sometimes, I don't know, I've heard that there has been instances where they've been fired from their jobs, which is, in my opinion, okay. Yeah, if you're gonna come out and you're gonna say nasty things, it shouldn't be tolerated. There should be repercussions for that.
I definitely think this is like a very nuanced prompt, but I'm kind of approaching it from the place that on college campus, when I would speak at Palestinian protests, there would be certain things that if you say them, you could be expelled from school or you could this. So I do think it's important that there is freedom of speech is allowed, because then you get the government trying to censor specific things you are saying.
Freedom of speech.
Yeah. Accountability is all fine and dandy. You just can't make hate speech illegal. You can't make offensive speech illegal. Socially, we hold each other accountable. In the private sector, you can hold each other accountable, because holding someone accountable and saying, hey, don't talk like that around me is also free speech. So you can pretty much say whatever you want to each other. You just can't harm each other physically. Kind of a no-brainer in my opinion. So this week we've been seeing growing outrage over what can and can't be questioned. Certain figures are off limits, certain stories are protected, while others are open season. And the inconsistency is super glaring. Is it just me? We're told, don't question this person, don't criticize that narrative. But in the same breath, we're encouraged to dissect, attack, and scrutinize others relentlessly. So what does that tell you? It's not about truth. It's about permission. Who is allowed to be questioned and who is allowed to be shielded? Because apparently controlling what people are allowed to think is far more powerful than controlling what they're told. Let's take a moment to look at the chat. Glad to see you guys are getting out in the sun, doing some husbandry of the land. It's always a great way to connect with the divine by putting your fingers in dirt, manicuring your lawn, going to the beach, just generally being outside. Glad to see that you guys are keeping your bodies fit and tending to yourself. All right. Now that we're on the topic of free speech, where do we go when it comes to government power and personal freedom?
Our goal is really not to be punitive necessarily, but to have universities, I think, return to what we all believe that universities really started out to being, and that was it is a place for truth seekers. It is a place for open debate, sharing of ideas, of learning. And I think that's what we need to have on our campuses without really directing ideology that is being taught. And as we're training our teachers for future generations in these colleges and universities, if they are teaching ideology instead of fact-based learning, that's just wrong. We ought to teach facts. We ought to teach critical thinking. We ought to be teaching all of those things at our universities. And at the same time, and I'm being repetitive, welcome open debate and sharing of ideas. And that all students should feel free on campus to walk about and to not be punished if they have different ideas than other students on campus. I think we've lost our way in that. And especially our elite universities, who really are the ones that are focused on the most. If they can be that bright and shining example for that, we would have accomplished an amazing amount in this short time that we have to focus on our universities. So that would clearly be my goal. I know it is certainly the goal of the president.
All right, and here is a bit of a USA versus Canada debate.
I think the United States does have the strongest freedom of expression, so it's kind of the closest to sort of the absolute. And then freedom of expression protections in Canada are very strong, but they're not absolute, right? So because the protections of the Charter, including Section 2, are modified by Section 1, the government can, in certain cases, restrict freedom of expression, and it's kind of subject to the sort of proportionality analysis of Section 1. So I guess I would say that, like, the First Amendment in the United States is written in absolute terms and is often interpreted in very absolute terms, whereas in Canada, I mean, like, really none of the provisions of the Charter are absolute, and so the government can make a case basically saying, well, in this instance, we actually do have to infringe on a charter right because it's so important. I think the United States does have the strongest freedom of expression. So it's kind of...
So what's the difference between civil liberties versus civil rights?
Civil liberties and civil rights are huge parts of the AP exam, and they are not the same thing. Civil liberties are protections of individual freedoms from the government. We're talking about rights that each individual has, things like speech, press, right to bear arms, Bill of Rights stuff. Civil liberties limit the power of governments. The First Amendment begins, Congress shall make no law. It's saying that certain things are just off limits for governments. Civil rights protect groups from discrimination. It protects people of a certain race, color, sex, disability from being discriminated against on the basis of group characteristics. Civil rights increases the power of government because the government is playing the role of protector of civil rights. So this is a fundamental difference between the two. Use the Equal Protection Clause as the basis for civil rights laws that stop the government from discriminating, and use the Commerce Clause for civil rights laws that outlaw discrimination by public businesses.
So now let's talk about something that hits at the core of what it means to be free. New policies and legal shifts are raising serious questions about autonomy, who controls decisions, and how much power institutions should really have over us as individuals. Because here's another uncomfortable truth. You guys know I love to deliver uncomfortable truths. Freedom isn't something you notice when you have it. It's something you feel, and when it starts slipping away, that's when we notice it. After it's half gone. And the scariest part is it rarely disappears overnight. It erodes slowly. In fact, freedom in this country is a complete illusion. Did you know in many states it's illegal to collect rainwater? Thank you, Obama. Policy by policy, rule by rule, it slowly erodes, justified by safety or necessity. until one day you wake up and realize the line moved and no one pushed back. Let's take a moment to get to the chat. Jack says, my friend's daughter met Linda McMahon a couple weeks ago before she left for LA. It was Freedom Week. So she was speaking at the something about freedom, some Institute for Freedom. Yes, collecting rainwater because it might have parasites and it's not safe. Honestly, Obama did this to further the New World Order, communism, prevent you from being able to be self-sustaining. Like I said, freedom is just an illusion. We have too many laws. We need to de-legislate, deregulate, and defund. All right. So let's look at the global power shift that's happening right now since, I just casually dropped that New World Order line on you.
US Policy Chief Elbridge Colby warned on Tuesday that Washington is ready to confront major geopolitical tectonic shifts, speaking during a visit to New Delhi. His remarks come a day after President Donald Trump described recent talks as productive, aimed at stopping the escalating conflict involving Iran. Colby emphasized that nations often adapt to new global realities, sometimes peacefully, but often through conflict, stressing the need to safeguard stability and US interests during this volatile period. Tensions have surged since February 28th, when the US and Israel launched strikes on Iran following stalled nuclear negotiations, despite mediation efforts by Oman reporting progress. In retaliation, Iran has targeted countries hosting US bases, hit key Gulf energy infrastructure, and effectively shut down the strategic Strait of Hormuz, a route vital for roughly 20% of global oil and LNG supplies.
All right, let's look more into the Middle East power shift, the US versus Russia versus China, the multipolar chessboard.
The unipolar era is over. The Middle East, once Washington's exclusive playground, is now a brutal multipolar chessboard. From Syrian war zones to Beijing's trillion-dollar megaprojects, a new power struggle defines the world's energy heartland. Who will ultimately control it? For 3 decades, America reigned supreme in the Middle East. Post-2011, the pivot to Asia-Pacific doctrine emerged. U.S. policymakers realized global power's future lay not in Iraq's deserts, but the South China Sea. After $8 trillion on prolonged wars, America was exhausted. Administrations from Obama to Biden tried reducing military involvement, confronting rising China. Yet, leaving proved difficult. Geopolitics anchors the U.S. Israel, an inseparable ally, and Saudi Arabia, a critical energy pillar, remain key anchors. America maintains a vast network of military installations. Roughly 50,000 troops are stationed across the region, from Qatar's Al Udeid Air Base to the U.S. Fifth Fleet in Bahrain. America's strategy evolved. Washington now pursues remote deterrence. This includes severe economic sanctions on Iran and deploying carrier strike groups to safeguard vital maritime choke points. The United States may no longer be the only player, but remains the referee with formidable firepower. While Washington pivoted, Moscow seized the vacuum. On September 30, 2015, Russia intervened in Syria. This marked a historic turning point. It wasn't just about rescuing Assad. It declared Russia's return as a global power. Unlike the US, Russia plays a pragmatic, flexible game. Moscow established permanent military bases, Tartus Naval Facility and KH-Mamim Air Base. These project influence across the Mediterranean and North Africa. Russia avoids rigid alliances. It cooperates with Iran, negotiates with Turkey, and maintains a deconfliction hotline with Israel. Even as the Syrian battlefield shifted, Russia retained its role as a key power broker. Its multi-directional diplomacy proved effective. Moscow demonstrated it needs no massive defense budget to shape the region's fate. Through precise military power and uncompromising diplomacy, Russia continues to exert enormous influence. If the US projects power with missiles and Russia with fighter jets, China enters the Middle East with its wallet and diplomacy. Through the Belt and Road Initiative, Beijing transformed the region into a critical global supply chain hub. China is now the largest buyer of oil from Gulf countries. By 2024, trade between China and the Gulf Cooperation Council surpassed Western levels, hitting a record $250 billion. China's ambitions extend beyond economics. In March 2023, Beijing successfully mediated a historic reconciliation between Saudi Arabia and Iran. This diplomatic breakthrough was a major blow to Washington's regional influence. China crafts its image as a peace-building superpower, presenting itself as an alternative to Western military intervention. By investing tens of billions in infrastructure, technology, and energy, Beijing quietly constructs a new geopolitical order. The Chinese yuan may eventually challenge the US dollar's dominance in global oil trade. The 21st century Middle East is a complex multipolar chessboard. Energy interests, maritime security, and ideological rivalries intersect. The United States pivots but cannot fully disengage. Russia has returned to reassert global status. China advances through massive economic influence. No single superpower can dominate this region alone. Competition unfolds across battlefields, oil pipelines, strategic ports, and diplomatic doors. This struggle for influence will continue for decades. A misstep could trigger a larger global conflict. What do you think? Who truly holds the key to power in the Middle East today? The United...
Is a new world order emerging? Here's why America's closest ally is turning to China.
क्या नया वर्ल्ड ऑर्डर बनने वाला है? कनाडा के प्राइम मिनिस्टर ने ये सुनो क्या बोला.
Mine is the first visit of a Canadian prime minister to China in nearly a decade. The world has changed much since that last visit. And I believe the progress that we have made in the partnership sets us up well for the new world order.
हुआ ये कि चाइना और कनाडा की ट्रेड डील हो चुकी है. जी हाँ, यूनाइटेड स्टेट्स ऑफ अमेरिका का पड़ोसी एंड
Okay. Is there a new world order already here? The global power shift is explained.
What if the world you know is already changing? What if power is shifting silently? And most people do not even realize it. This is Trend Summary, where we bring you perspectives no one talks about. For years, one country shaped the global system, the United States. It influenced trade, politics, and global decisions. Organizations like the United Nations and the World Trade Organization helped maintain this structure. The world felt stable. But was it really? Now, things are changing. Power is no longer in one place. China is expanding fast. India is rising steadily. New alliances like BRICS are gaining strength. This is not sudden. It is slow but powerful. Earlier, power meant armies and land. Today, power means data, technology, control over digital systems. Even money is going digital. And that raises a serious question. Is this convenience or control? At the same time, tensions are growing. Big countries are competing. Influence is being challenged. Alliances are shifting, and the world is becoming unpredictable. In all this, India is rising, not loudly, but strategically. India is balancing relationships, building influence, and slowly becoming a key decision maker. This is not just global politics. It affects you, your money, your job, your future. The new world order is not coming. It is already here. No announcement, no warning, just a silent shift. So ask yourself, are we moving toward a more balanced world or a more controlled one? This is Trend Summary. Stay informed. Stay aware. What if the world you know is already...
So let's zoom out for a moment, because this isn't just about one country, clearly. We're watching a global realignment happen. Alliances are shifting. Power structures are evolving. Nations are testing each other's limits. And the United States, still a dominant force, but increasingly challenged on multiple fronts. Economically, militarily. Did you know Iran's military is just as big as ours in terms of how many bodies they have? It's also challenged digitally, as we've seen. And when multiple pressures build at once, history shows us something very consistent. That's when major shift happens. Not gradually, but suddenly. So, how does this affect the market? What is going on this week in our economic climate? What's the economic pressure, and what is it really signaling?
Happy spring, everybody. This is Connor Darrell from the WealthSpire investment team, back with our March installment of Markets in 2 Minutes.
This is 3 days
News
ago.
flow is moving very quickly when it comes to the ongoing conflict in the Middle East between the United States, Israel, and Iran.
All right, and here is the U.S. oil production since 1922. They've got the chart all the way up to 2022. Of course, you see this spike right here at the end. That is Trump in office. Remember, drill, baby, drill.
And markets have thus far been pretty resilient. But with this month's update, we wanted to zero in on what we perceive to be the most significant risk surrounding the war, which is how oil markets are responding and how that might translate in terms of direct impacts on the U.S. economy. Now, it's rather intuitive that given the instability in the region and the effective closure of the Strait of Hormuz, a key choke point for oil supply, that would lead to higher prices. But generally speaking, the U.S. economy is better positioned than it has been historically when it comes to insulating itself from surging oil prices. And the first line of defense, so to speak, is that U.S. oil production is currently at all-time highs. And the chart on your screen is mapping out U.S. oil production over time, and you can see where things had previously peaked back in the 70s and 80s when it was thought that we had sort of depleted our reserves. But then in around 2010, we had some technological breakthroughs, think fracking. That helped us to extract oil we didn't previously have access to, and that led to a massive resurgence in U.S. production and led us to where we are today. So that helped the U.S. economy to give itself some cushion against overseas disruptions to oil supply. That doesn't mean that U.S. consumers are completely insulated, as I'm sure everyone has experienced when filling up their gas tank recently, but this dynamic is an important consideration, and we'll build on that idea with this next chart. The other key factor working in favor of U.S. consumers is that food and energy costs make up a significantly smaller percentage of consumer budgets than they did just a few decades ago, especially compared to the oil crisis back in the 70s. So we're talking about a price shock that is no doubt going to have an impact, but that impact is likely to be muted relative to history. Obviously, the longer this conflict goes on and the more oil prices stay higher for longer, that does have an impact on the economy and on consumers in particular. But ultimately, given the productivity of the U.S. oil industry and the makeup of consumer spending, those impacts are still likely to be relatively small and shouldn't unilaterally threaten to derail the earnings and growth story that's currently alive and well for the U.S. economy. Thanks for checking in with us, and we'll see you in April for our next update.
Is a rebound in the stock market. This after President Trump announced that the United States and Iran were engaged in talks to end the war, and we saw the numbers just shoot up here. But Iran denies that any direct negotiations are taking place. Still, it was enough to send the market back into positive territory. The Dow was up more than 600 points. All of this is now to make the average investor's head probably spin, trying to figure out what exactly is going on. Action News reporter Trish Hartman spoke with a financial expert about the market and joins us live now along the Ben Franklin Parkway near there in the city with the latest, Trish.
Yeah, Shari, stocks rallied today after President Trump says he was speaking with Iranian officials about a potential resolution to the war. Now, it has been a volatile period for those with investments. We spoke with a financial advisor today about what you should do next. Bo Zhao tries to keep up with her young kids, current events, and the stock market, but it can be a challenge.
There's just so much information out there, and you just never know what is right and what is just kind of noise.
As the Iran war enters its fourth week, many investors are feeling the anxiety that comes with a volatile stock market. Today, President Trump announced postponements of attacks on Iran's energy infrastructure, citing productive talks with Tehran. Iranian officials are denying those talks have happened. Bo Zhao wonders how long this will go on and if she should take action with her investments.
I try to think long term. I am thinking of moving some more money into a cash position just for the rest of the year, just to be safe.
Certified financial planner Charles Weeks says that's not a bad thought if done the right way.
Take 20% out of the market and put it in a short-term investment vehicle. I would say don't put it in cash.
put it in a money market. You could earn, 3.5% on a money market account. And that'll at least keep up with inflation a little bit.
Weeks says there's still a lot of uncertainty right now, despite today's gains. He's advising his clients to think practically and to diversify.
Don't react emotionally and overreact to anything going on in the markets. So you have to have, a solid financial plan. You have to have a solid investment policy statement, a solid portfolio that's well diversified, and that's your starting point.
Now, Weeks also says be sure to have an emergency fund. 3 to 6 months in cash is always a good idea. It gives you a little bit of a cushion in case there is a prolonged sell-off market and oil prices remain high. We're live.
Trump, please tell me why, if you said that the Strait of Hormuz being closed doesn't affect us because we have plenty of oil between Venezuela, ours, another source. So we're basically opening the Strait of Hormuz, not for us to pass through for oil, but for other countries. Just like I said in the beginning. It seems like we're doing the work for all these countries. When will the globe respond? Don't understand. If we have all this oil, why is our oil up so high right now, sir? But let's look at the stock market's rolling correction happening right now, oh my gosh, I can never say this. The vitality potential to ignite wild swings. Sorry, y'all. I had to fix my mouth to say that.
Let's get out to George Silas now, because we do have some data, and I suppose we're getting an indication of how investors are feeling about everything, George. But we want to know how consumers are feeling as well, particularly because of how people are feeling at the pump about some of these kitchen table issues. We've just got the survey out from UMich. Walk us through what you're seeing.
Well, I mean, this is soft data, so you can see that there's
The video before was 3 days ago. This is 11 hours ago.
impact going on since the end of February, because if you look at the sentiment numbers as a whole, they published 53.3. That was down relative to the previous month at 56.6, but also missing the consensus estimates, which were already expected to be down to around 55.5. But you can see also that if you look at the 1-year inflation expectations, they've jumped about 40 basis points to 3.8% from 3.4%. Again, they were forecasted to be pretty much in line relative to the previous month at 3.4. The 5-year inflation expectations didn't budge at around 3.2%. So it looks like right now, at least from a consumer sentiment standpoint or consumer expectation standpoint, everyone seems to be in line with what's going on with oil prices moving higher. And it's also, again, reflective of what's going on in the bond market. You mentioned the 10-year yields. The 2-year yields are softening just slightly today, but at around 3.95%, they continue to increase as a result of what's happening from an inflation push standpoint across the board from energy.
Yeah, I was seeing long-term bonds, biggest ever outflow since March 2020. So that really gives you an idea of that end of the curve, as you say. I mean, obviously, we've seen that as a global story that's been playing out everywhere from Germany to the UK to Australia as well. Much more sort of hawkish sounding central banks with some of these inflationary pressures. I suppose the big question is, what we're going to see on the fiscal side, as far as, government stepping in to support what is now looking like potentially shaky growth forecasts with some of these stagflationary signals we're getting from, like the PMIs, for instance. So President Trump came out with this Truth Social post. Interesting timing. It was just minutes after the Wall Street closed yesterday, after what had been a pretty tough day for markets. It seems to have failed to spark some optimism now as we go into the weekend. Just walk us through what you think that means and some of the other headlines which may be weighing on sentiment today, George.
So, I think let's look at things from a half glass full standpoint, at least from a sentiment standpoint. You go back to April of last year, sentiment was actually quite a bit lower. So we're not actually at that level as of the tariff scare last year, April. as we are now. So that's positive. So it looks like to me, at the very least, that consumers expect this to pass. But if you look at the markets, interesting enough this week, the S&P is now, at least right now, trading below last Friday's low. So again, if you look at the 50-week moving average, it's trading below that level. And that could, again, add some more pressure into the next coming couple of weeks. But the challenge really lies, and I think this is the consensus out there, that everyone expects this to pass. But that actually might be a little bit dangerous in this environment. In other words, everyone is ready, not selling as much as they would like to or you would expect them to. It seems like there's a institutional support of this market. But again, everyone's on one side of the trade. There doesn't seem to be a aggressive selling going on. So we're in a rolling correction is how I describe it. It's a really bad correction because it's just slowly grinding to the downside with volatility upside. The challenge really lies is going into the weekend, position traders probably don't want to hold positions unless things change, which they can on a dime, because we know a tweet or some sort of comment from the White House can flip this market. And that might come about from some more clarity on the war, but also it could come about from some reprieve or pullback on tariffs. Those are two very prominent catalysts that could create a whipsaw rally back to the upside. So, it's a challenge to be short this market, but it's also a challenge to add longs. And so for what it's worth, again, you just have to wait and see until we get some concrete clarity on the outcome of war. Because looking at crude oil this week, it really hasn't moved all that much compared to last week, but the markets haven't been really receptive to some of the positive news, especially the news after the close yesterday on the Trump administration's pause on at least attacks on oil infrastructure in Iran.
Right, and after that, we broke that on Market on Close just before we wrapped things up yesterday. And I've been looking at a lot of the commentary following that saying, is this a taco trade? Because they have been good for the markets, but that doesn't seem to be the case so much. And, maybe it's because of some of the conflicting headlines, the expectation of more troops heading obviously to the Middle East as well. Fascinating journal report on Iran actually blocking 2 Chinese ships from Hormuz, which is pretty rare given that if you've had a Chinese flag on your ship, you've actually been, for the most part, allowed through. But yeah, it's an interesting market given what you've just laid out. Binary risk, isn't it, George? It can de-escalate as quickly as it can re-escalate. You mentioned correction. In that territory, you've got S&P sectors like financials, discretionary, communication services, and technology. Just walk us through what your expectations are for volatility heading into the weekend, since we have seen that de-risking typically in the last few weeks.
Well, if you look, I'm just looking at the term structure right now. The term structure is relatively flat, looking at 9 to 30-day to 90-day volatility. So again, that speaks to potentially some sort of a pivot back to the upside in very short order. So that's the challenge of saying, hey, I'm going to attack to the downside and be a bear, because any tweet can change the outcome of this market. But again, the market rolling over, at least right now, as of things are trading so far, there's a possibility we end up near the last year February levels. Again, prior to the tariff scare. That's a possibility because that's a technical shelf, at least on the market. But again, unless there's some reprieve, this market's still going to be relatively challenged, because this week's interesting in the sense that crude oil really hasn't spiked all that much higher compared to last week, but the markets have not been, receptive. Plus, I think the endogenous factors are still out there, and that includes, the private credit risk, which I've talked about quite a bit, that there's no such thing as sequestration of private credit. It's baked into the banking system, it's tied into the banking system, that it can create an asset liability mismatch. Plus, looking at the memory manufacturers, Micron and SanDisk, they're up a little bit today, but they've been down significantly over the last couple of weeks. And the big mega cap names like Microsoft and Oracle have been really rolling over since late last year, the Q4 of last year. So I think that's indicative of potentially the overinvestment cycle of AI. That's endogenous. But again, you throw in the exogenous factors, tariffs, war, it's just too much. And I think right now the market is telling us this. But again, it's tough to be short because any outcome could be positive to reverse this market higher.
I was speaking to some of my guests about that as well. Being CapExed up to the eyeballs in a market like this, when you have a potential for an energy shock, not to mention some of those memory prices, it's why we've seen perhaps a migration of capital out of some of the paper assets into some of the harder assets, even though they've pulled back a bit. But you've got gold and silver up on a day when the dollar is up as well. So it's such an interesting market from the perspective of some of these dynamics. George, really appreciate it. Thanks for getting us across some of the moves for us today.
You said earlier this month, I'm going to quote you, quote, I think there are sectors of the economy that are in a recession. Kevin Hassett, director of the National Economic Council, said, quote, we're starting to see pockets of the economy that look like they might be in a recession. Which parts of the economy do you believe have dipped into a recession?
Well, clearly housing has been struggling, and interest rate sensitive sectors have been in a recession. And the other thing that was not helpful, Kristen, was the longest government shutdown in history. It was 1.5% hit to GDP. They had 9,500 flights canceled. And the Democrats didn't care that they hurt the American economy and anything to stop Donald Trump.
Well, big picture, is the country at risk, the entire country at risk of being in a recession?
No, I am very confident about 2026 because what we are going to see is the president has done peace deals, tax deals, and trade deals, but one big, beautiful bill. I am very, very optimistic on 2026. We have set the table for a very strong, non-inflationary growth economy.
You said earlier this month.
So I'm curious to see how that's going to age. But now let's talk about something that doesn't affect just governments. It affects you, your money, your business, your future. Because while everyone is distracted by headlines, the economy is quietly sending signals. What in the world? Hold on, y'all.
Hey there, everyone. Today, we're diving into a fascinating topic that's got a lot of people talking, the ongoing conflict in Iran and its impact on the US economy. Now, this is a complex issue with many moving parts, and I want to take you through my thoughts and analysis on what's happening and why it matters. First off, let's talk about the war itself. Americans are divided on this, but one thing is clear: most want to see a swift end to the conflict. And it's not just about ending the war, it's about ensuring the Iranian people's freedom and stopping their nuclear program. These are the key goals that resonate with the majority. But here's the catch: the longer this war drags on, the more uncertain people become. They're not just worried about the human cost, they're also concerned about the economic fallout. And that brings us to the rising gas.
This speaks to what Jack just said in the chat about his college professor telling him how the stock market moves is really less about economics and more about emotion. These are behaviors tied to money movement incited by emotions plus mass consciousness. So it's touching on that a little bit.
Gas prices. You see, the conflict has directly impacted the price of crude oil, which, in turn, has driven up gas prices. And this isn't just a short-term issue. People are worried about the long-term economic implications. It's no surprise that feelings of pessimism are on the rise, with many fearing a recession. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Most Americans feel they haven't gotten a clear explanation from the Trump administration about the war's goals and objectives. This lack of communication has led to a collective uncertainty, with many questioning the necessity of the conflict. And this uncertainty extends to the president's base as well. Despite their support for Trump, even his most loyal followers are unsure about the war's duration and its potential benefits. It's a rare instance where we see a divide within a typically unified group. So, what does this all mean? Well, personally, I think it highlights the importance of transparent communication during times of conflict. When people feel informed and understand the rationale behind decisions, it can foster a sense of unity and support. But here's the thing: the administration's approval ratings haven't taken a significant hit. This suggests that while people may have concerns, they're not necessarily blaming the president for the economic fallout. It's a delicate balance, and it'll be interesting to see how public opinion evolves as the war continues. In conclusion, this conflict is a complex web of geopolitical and economic factors. It's a reminder that wars have consequences that extend far beyond the battlefield, impacting everyday lives and shaping public opinion. So, what do you think? How do you see this situation unfolding? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Until next.
And if you look at the market right now, you can feel it. Because gold is falling right now, even in war.
Gold is supposed to be the ultimate safe haven. So why is it suddenly dropping hard? In just a short time, gold has lost over 10% of its value. Investors are pulling out, prices are falling, and even gold mining stocks are getting hit. So what's really going on here? Is this just a temporary dip or a warning sign of something bigger? Let's break it down in the simplest way possible. It all starts with one man, Jerome Powell. The Federal Reserve recently decided to keep interest rates unchanged, but during the announcement, Powell signaled something important. He warned that rising oil prices could push inflation higher, and more importantly, that future rate hikes are still on the table. That one signal changed everything. Because when interest rates rise, gold becomes less attractive. Here's why. Gold doesn't pay you anything. No interest, no dividends, but assets like bonds do. So when interest rates go up, investors start shifting their money away from gold and into assets that actually generate returns. That's exactly what we're seeing right now. Bond yields are rising and gold is falling. But that's not the only reason. Over the past year, gold has been on a massive run, hitting record highs. And whenever an asset rises that fast, investors eventually start taking profits. They sell to lock in gains. And when enough people do that at the same time, prices drop. There's also a global factor at play.
Gold is really just for survival, really. Stacking up gold. It's not a fiat. It's not paper. It's hard currency. In times of calamity, disaster, or war, things like gold, silver, copper, salt become very valuable. And it actually, you can compare its value because you can physically see it, but it doesn't behave the same way that they're describing here, which is why the investors move their money when you come out of a recession, into something that will actually grow, because gold can't do that. Our dollar was supposed to be backed by gold, but it isn't anymore. So that's really, gold is a survival tool in all reality. It's also a very strong antibiotic and antiviral. So is silver. Silver kills 4,000 bacteria and 700 viruses. Destabilized silver. I'm not done with that. So not colloidal silver. Colloidal silver is very mild, doesn't do much, but treats scrapes and burns. That is shelf stable. What you actually have to do with silver, and you can do the same thing with gold because it actually kills even more. And it also increases collagen production and is an anti-aging mineral that your body actually needs. So what you do is you take a giant pickle jar, get distilled water. It has to be if it's a clear pickle jar, you got to drape it, but you go buy, 0.999 silver from the rods from a jeweler or a supplier. You bend the little rods into a little hook on the top, hang them on the top, and you've got these two mini jumper cables hooked up to a battery, and you turn it on and the silver flakes out into the water. I've been treating my own illnesses this way for 20 years because I don't do antibiotics unless it's like absolute emergency. And you can do the same thing with gold. However, once you make this, you have to transfer it to a bottle where sunlight cannot get through. It has to be glass. It cannot be plastic because it changes the charge of the ions in the silver and it's dead. So you can make it at different concentrations, keep it out of the sunlight, put it in blue or black glass and inside of a bag, and you can keep it for years. Gold and silver is very valuable if we were to ever end up in a situation, like what Venezuela had went through. But let's continue back with the video.
During times of uncertainty, both gold and the US dollar are seen as safe havens. But right now, the dollar is getting stronger. That means some investors are choosing to move their money out of gold and into the dollar instead. Even though both are considered safe, capital tends to flow toward the stronger one. And then there's the retail investors. Data shows that everyday investors are starting to pull money out of gold funds. In fact, millions of dollars flowed out of one of the most popular gold ETFs in just hours. That kind of selling pressure adds fuel to the decline, and it doesn't stop there. Gold mining stocks are also taking a hit. Companies like Newmont and Freeport-McMoRan have dropped sharply, and gold mining ETFs are falling as well. This shows that the weakness isn't just in gold itself, it's across the entire sector. So when you put it all together, the picture becomes clear. Rising interest rate fears, higher bond yields, profit taking after a massive rally, a stronger US dollar, and investors pulling money out. All of these forces are pushing gold down at the same time. But here's the key question.
Here's something I just thought of. Remember the phrase, the blue bloods? This is where this phrase came from. During the time of the Renaissance, the bubonic plague, when the rats were spreading the plague around, the wealthy people who were they got the nickname blue bloods. And the reason for that is because silverware was actually made out of silver. And before refrigeration, they would put a silver coin in their milk to prevent from spoiling. when you ingest enough silver, you get a blue tint to your eyeballs, to your skin if you're a lighter color. And you really can't get like silver poisoning. You have to take in so much silver to be poisoned by silver. That's one of the great things about it. So you can make it in very strong concentrations. Same thing with gold. And your skin will actually get a blue hue. And there was a man on Oprah called the Blue Man. You should look it up. He was totally blue, and that's because of the amount of silver he ingests. Blue like a Smurf. You can turn blue like a Smurf. It's like people who eat a fuck ton of carrots. They turn literally fucking orange. But yeah, so the blue bloods, so they didn't get sick with the bubonic plague because their plates, silverwares, and cups were all made out of silver. That's also where the term born with a silver spoon in your mouth came from.
Is this a buying opportunity or the start of a bigger shift? Because in markets, what looks like fear to some looks like opportunity to others. If you want to understand moves like this and stay ahead of the market, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel.
Okay. My daughter got her first silver coin for Christmas this last Christmas, and in a month it went up 30%. So she was pretty excited about that. And it's fun teaching your kids about bartering, self-sustainment, homeopathic medicine, natural medicine, because Mother Earth really has provided everything we need here. The Father in all his wisdom knew that. And what we need to be healthy and safe is right here. Pirates, that's why they had gold tooth, gold earrings. That was their form of currency should they have lost their actual coin. So now that we watched this video, what are we feeling? Volatility, sharp drops, and just general uncertainty. That chart you are looking at, it's not just numbers. That is confidence slipping. A lot of this is behavior related, just like Jack said, because when people are uncertain, we start to look at other means of making sure we can sustain ourselves. It's always good to have a level of suspicion. Don't be so secure. Don't be overly secure, because with the change, with the New World Order and digital currency, if they want to totally wipe your bank account out, they absolutely can. If they want to freeze it, they absolutely can. And they're doing this in China now actively. But let's get into our second to last video on the economy as it pertains to this week. So the U.S. continuing claims to fall to nearly a 2-year low.
A bit of a rise in jobless claims to exactly what was predicted, 210,000 for the week ending last week on March 21st. However, that's still a very low number, so it doesn't really suggest any kind of change, just a little bit of volatility. The continuing claims number, 1,819,000, is down from 1,851,000 2 weeks ago. So not much change on the labor side of the Fed's mandate, and it doesn't appear that companies are reacting yet to anything that's happening over in the Middle East. However, we are seeing, and I wanted to bring this back up, I know you talked to the Secretary General a little while ago of the OECD, the inflation side of the Fed's mandate is starting to show cracks. The OECD predicting 4.2% inflation for the U.S. this year. That may not be completely accurate, since we don't know how long this is all going to go on, but it's something that people should be considering when they're filtering through what the Fed is going to be saying over the next couple of days. And the rest of those countries, here's a point that people are starting to make in the economic circles. The rest of those countries could be in trouble, because not only are oil prices going up, but the dollar's going up. And as the dollar goes up, their currencies buy less. And
so you can see the difference between yesterday and today. So we'll see what happens.
Priced in dollars. So it's a double squeeze for the rest of the world. And that could lead to demand destruction that leads to lower growth here.
That's the 1-2 punch. Stateside, Mike, this is what I hear a lot. Let's work through it together. Inflation, ultimately, by the time we get to the end of the year, will be closer to 3.
Yo, his accent is so thick, I did not understand a word of what he said when he first came on. But before we continue on that video, I am going to take a break and bring you a message from our friends over at Pickaxe. All right, guys, big announcement. The Pickaxe app is officially live on iOS and Android. If you're tired of algorithmic manipulation and shadow banning and platforms collecting your data while throttling your reach, this is exactly why Pickaxe exists. They have no algorithms deciding who's going to see your content, no data mining, and it's social media that actually acts social. And this is huge for the Rumble community. Your Rumble videos play directly inside the Pickaxe news feed like native posts. No redirects, no audience loss, just seamless integration. We've already got major voices on the platform like Diamond and Silk, The Vigilant Fox, Rampage Jackson, Dr. Pierre Corey, Dr. Mary Tally Bowden, Children's Health Defense, Shannon Joy, and many more building the communities there. The Rumble gaming community is jumping into the Joker, Uncle Pudge, Midnight in the Mountains, Vapin' Gamers, Chavez Flexington, Soundboard Lord, Cat Dog, and plenty more are making Pickaxe their home base. This is about owning your audience instead of renting it from an algorithm. Download the Pickaxe app right now on iOS or Android, or head to pickaxe.com to join. And remember, you are the algorithm. All right, let's get back to our video.
Than 2. That will constrain the Fed, but the Fed doesn't have to worry about an inflationary spiral and so-called second-order effects, because we're told, Mike, that this labour market is not as tight as it once was. Then I look at claims at 210 and a 4-week moving average of around the same number. Mike, and I wonder just how tight this labour market is. How tight is it?
We don't think it's all that tight, but the biggest issue is that we have lost a lot of population because of the crackdown on immigration, and that seems to be leading to a situation where employers need fewer workers because the economy is not putting the pressure on them at this point. And so we don't see the unemployment rate rising as you would think it might in this kind of situation. But nobody knows for sure. This is one of those things we'll be looking back on 5 years from now and have a better handle on exactly what's going on. But as I think Jay Powell said in his news conference the other day, economy is still performing relatively well. There are all these clouds on the horizon, though. That's the big question is, does the OECD's forecast come true? And do we see the rest of the world slow down and the U.S. economy slow down? No sign yet, really.
All right. So, the real story? Here's what people miss. The stock market's not just about companies. It's about belief. Belief in stability, belief in leadership, belief in the future. And when that belief starts to shake, the markets react fast. Let's look at the last video on oil prices sliding as Trump signals Iran peace talks and he eases Hormuz access. Let's get into this final video.
A bit of a rise in jobless claims to exactly what was predicted, 210,000 for the week ending last week on March 21st. However, that's still a very low number, so it doesn't really suggest any kind of change, just a little bit of volatility. The continuing claims number, 1,819,000, is down from 1,851,000 2 weeks ago. So not much change on the labor side of the Fed's mandate, and it doesn't appear that companies are reacting yet to anything that's happening over in the Middle East. However, we are seeing, and I wanted to bring this back up. I know you talked to the Secretary General a little while ago of the OECD. The inflation side of the Fed's mandate is starting to show cracks. The OECD predicting 4.2% inflation for the U.S. this year. That may not be completely accurate since we don't know how long this is all going to go on, but it's something that people should be considering when they're filtering through what the Fed is going to be saying over the next couple of days. And the rest of those countries, here's a point that people are starting to make in the economic circles. The rest of those countries could be in trouble because not only are oil prices going up, but the dollar's going up. And as the dollar goes up, their currencies buy less, and oil's priced in dollars. So it's a double squeeze for the rest of the world. And that could lead to demand destruction that leads to lower growth here.
That's the 1-2 punch. Stateside, Mike, this is what I hear a lot. Let's work through it together. Inflation ultimately, by the time we get to the end of the year, will be closer to 3 than 2. That will.
Here we go. This is the right video. I was like, this video seems just like the last one. All right. Hormuz access eases. Uncertainty clouds diplomatic process. Oil prices fall sharply as the U.S. President Donald Trump claims ongoing negotiations to end the Iran war. Brent crude drops 5% to $99, while U.S. traded oil declines over 5.5%. Trump says talks happening now, claims counterparts eager for deal despite Tehran strongly denying negotiations. This is 2 days ago. Iran dismisses U.S. claims as fake news, questions credibility of Washington's diplomacy and ongoing strikes. Tehran signals limited relief, allows non-hostile vessels to pass through Strait of Hormuz under strict coordination rules. This isn't even for our benefit. The rest of the world should be saying thank you. Iran warns ships must not support aggression and must comply fully with declared safety and security regulations. Reports suggest U.S. proposed 15-point plan, including reopening Hormuz and recognizing it as free maritime zone. It is illegal to have it closed. Plan reportedly offers sanctions removal to Iran though details remain unverified and officially unconfirmed. Global markets rally as Asia-Pacific indices surge, reflecting easing fears of prolonged, let me back that up, of prolonged oil supply disruptions. Experts warn price drop may reverse without credible follow-through, with risks of recession if conflict escalates. All right. So, there's your weekly recap. Where does this leave us? Right here, in the middle of it. Watching a world that feels like it's speeding up. Where the truth feels harder to find. And where the line between reality and manipulation gets thinner every day. But here's the thing. You don't need to have all the answers. You just need to stay awake, stand firm, be mighty. You need to stay awake to question, to observe, to trust that instinct that's inside you. The instinct that says something is not right, because that is your sixth sense. And in times like these, it might be the most powerful tool you have. If one of you would like to find a show for me to raid, now would be a great point. But if you felt this episode, if something in you resonated, make sure you follow me, subscribe, and also share this with someone who still thinks critically. Because this isn't just news, this is awareness. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Thank you, Ryan, for the super chat, for the rant. Sorry, I can't get confused on what platforms we're on. For the Rumble rant, he says, if you like the show, please donate, rant, and support Luna. She took out a huge loan to buy all the equipment needed for her to do this show and save America. Thank you so much for the rant, my dear Ryan. Jack says, my hair is spectacular. What? This is my literal natural hair out the shower, without all the done up that I've always been doing, because this week's been just hell, with the health stuff going on. I barely have time to shower. I didn't realize I didn't brush my teeth for like 3 days this week, and I didn't shower for like 4, because I've just been going non-stop morning till like 4 in the morning. Last night I didn't even go to bed till 7 in the morning. So this is the no makeup look, bed hair. And I am flattered that you think my hair is spectacular. What a great word. And Backwaters is pure natural beauty. Thank you so much. You guys are literally such a great place to come to when you definitely need a pick-me-up. You guys are the best. And Jack, I went with your suggestion with the color of my nails, and I got compliments all week on it. And I didn't get to do the gold, but I think the next set I'm going to do some Viking runes on my nails, just because it'll be fun to do some art. Thank you, Coach Crispy. I really appreciate that. I've been having a time dealing with getting older. I've just been like looking at all the young tarts around town. I don't even like to go outdoors anymore because I like see all these young 20-somethings around, and I'm just like, oh, mama is looking haggish. And I just like, y'all, my leg hairs, I just shaved them, and like the first time in like 6 months, they were like friggin' this long. I didn't even know my hair could get that long. It's the first time in my life this has happened to me. But, we are on a mission to save America, to keep everybody awake, to keep everybody's sixth sense alert, alive, keep their third eye strong. So if I have to not shower to do that, then that's what I'll do. Please, please, please share my episode on your social media. Share it with your friends that are also into being awake, being alert, and having a good, strong, critical mind. Backwater, I am going to get with you tonight about the merch store, and Coach Crispy. Maybe you and Backwater could like team up on making me some merch, and maybe that'll be the first thing I buy is a product for myself, designed by my fans. I think that would be really special, actually. And if you need any photos of me or logos, gifts, we can do that. Crispy, I know you have emailed me. Backwater, I need you to email me, thirsttrapnews@gmail.com. And anybody else who would like to volunteer time to help produce the show, now is a point in my life where I definitely need that, as my production team is now like part-time. So that way, they can take care of their health. And I am learning so much about producing a show. And I just know that I'm like super behind on posting episodes to YouTube. I need to spend my time doing that. So it would be like freaking dope if I could get my fans to kind of like run my fourth wall merch store. That would be so fun. And maybe I could get rid of the fourthwall.com ending, and actually maybe one of you guys, if you want to, purchase, a donation could be, purchasing the actual store address for the internet. It's like a website address, but it's not a website, I guess. It's sort of a website that you build. But anyhow, I will see you guys tomorrow for my niche topic. And tomorrow, what I'm going to be showing you is I'm going to outline how Erica Kirk is an Israeli honeypot that was sent to marry Charlie Kirk and raid TPUSA and manage and handle Charlie Kirk, and probably, in my opinion, assisted in providing access to Charlie that day that he was viciously and so gruesomely for the world to see murdered. So that will be tomorrow. It will be about Erica Kirk and why we're totally sus of her and mad that the government will not, just like Israel will not stop with constantly meddling in our politics so far as to blackmail and murder American citizens. So that will be for tomorrow. And I need to find a day, maybe one day a month, where I just do like a funny episode. You know what I mean? Something where we could just like de-stress and like not be so serious. But let me look for a Rumble show that I can send you guys off to. I don't want to send you guys to a show that just like loops, you know, a bunch of shows on their page. I don't know what are you guys in the mood for? You guys in the mood? Oh, we can raid Mersh again. I love Mersh. He's so fun. He's such a good guy. I like him. He is on Nightwave Radio. He has a partner, Daywave Radio. Don't even bother watching that show. That guy Royce, my brother-in-law, he fucking sucks, and I can't stand him. So he's not very good to his brother, to my husband. So we are not going to support Daywave, but we will definitely support Nightwave Radio because Mersh is a cool guy and has always been good to producer Ryan. So anyway, good night. With that, I bid you adieu.